Welcome back to the Centered on Buffalo podcast. We're joined by the offensive line coach, my former offensive line coach with the Bills, and that's Aaron Kromer. Krome, welcome to the podcast, brother.
Hey, it's great to be on your podcast. You can see the picture behind me. I still hang you high in the sky, right in my office.
Oh, I love it. How's the offseason going so far? Are you getting a little downtime?
Yeah, thank goodness. We worked for a week after the season to kind of finalize some things, and then we took 2 weeks off, and then we just got back this past week. So we're spending this week doing some self-scout and getting ready for the combine coming up.
Yeah, I don't think people realize how many hours in a day an NFL coach works. And so not game day, but what's a normal day like hours-wise? How much time are you at the facility, maybe on average during the season?
Well, I mean, let's just say I eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner here, and it's a long wait to get to breakfast. And after dinner, I get hungry again before I go home. So pretty long days, but, there's so much to do, and it's so exciting for us, even though it's a grind. We wake up before our alarms go off. Your wife thinks you're crazy because you just got home. You take it, Howard Mudd taught me, he's like, listen, you got to sleep fast at night. And so you got to sleep fast because you don't have much time. So, you do that. But honestly, like there's a lot of mornings you wake up before the alarm goes off and you're like, what is wrong with me? But your body just has a body clock. It's time to go. There's always a few things you got to solve before the players get in. And so you want to do that. And then at the end of the night, you feel like you shouldn't quit. Like you just got to keep finding a better way to run the plays you like to run and put guys in position to win.
Do you blame that on John Gruden? Was he the first one to start like the 4 a.m. till 10 p.m.? And I know generally you guys aren't getting in there at 4, but that was the old Gruden way. And then he wins the Super Bowl doing that way. And then I felt like at that time, everyone else felt like they need, and this is kind of hearsay from what I've heard from other coaches, but do you blame John Gruden for all that?
I don't know, because John Gruden was my first job in the NFL.
Exactly.
So he got up at 3:17 every day. That was his lucky number. What happened with him is he went to the doctor and he's like, listen, man, I can't sleep. And the doctor said, then go to work. So he did. And from that time on, he's like, hey, I get up at 3:17, I go and I work as long as I can. And, he didn't stay as late at night. Some people would do it on the reverse end. But they're always 16-hour days or so. It's just that's a normal day. And you don't think twice about it because, it's like my wife says, it's like if you would work an 8-hour day, then you would, you would still be, your mind would be somewhere else the rest of the night and you'd go back to work anyway. So it's not a whole lot of difference. You get addicted to having to doing this and it's something you can't get out of your system.
Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense. So, you are happily married from all indications from what I've seen around you and Don. Brooke's doing awesome. Zach's trying to follow in your footsteps. So one of the things that deters me from the coaching industry is all the hours and being away. How have you made it work to where you have a great home life as well, even though for a lot of the year you're putting in these 16-hour days?
Yeah, that's a lot about your wife and how she treats the situation. And she knew from the time we went to high school together. So she knew I was a psychopath then, and she married me. So it's her own fault. But no, she really, she understands that this is what makes me tick. And she runs her end and I run my end. And we meet in the middle. And along those lines, what I was talking before is she always said, listen, when you are home, you are home. You're not messing around doing something else on the computer. You play with the kids when they were growing up. You were all in when you walked through the door. And, if you're working 9 to 5, I think it's easier to say, hey, I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that and not pay attention to the kids, a lot of time anyway. So I think it gave us great direction. Our kids both really liked being a part of it. Not like you said, Brooke was trying to get into sports broadcasting, didn't work out. She sells real estate and doing a great job, but that really helps her in that communicating with people. And Zach obviously is working with the Los Angeles Rams and as an assistant O-line coach, and he can't get away from it either. And I told him when he was growing up, because I could tell, because 10 years old, he's out there with Gruden and all these nuts, and he's walking around the field. And I said, listen, go sell money like the rich people. Don't do this.
Gil Bird described it to me one day. Gil Bird and I were eating breakfast one day at the facility, and it was early. It's probably 5:30 or 6, and we're the only two in the cafeteria. We're grabbing breakfast, and I was asking him about his son Jairus, who I played with, and he said, I've never seen Jairus play a professional game because he came to the Bills after Jairus had left. And I said, really? Like the bye weeks never fell where you could? He said, no, we were generally working that next Sunday. So he said, I've never watched my son play an NFL game, but he said, Eric, it's like the reason that I thought of this is you said addiction, because he said, I'm an addict. I'm addicted to coaching football at this point in my life. I was addicted to playing football. Now I'm addicted to coaching football to where I should have, he's like, look, should I have walked away and maybe watched him play? Sure. But he goes, there was always a championship. There was always the next best job that I was about to get. And he goes, I just simply can't turn away from it. So hearing you say that Zach's now, he's got the addiction now. And how's he doing? How's he like being out in LA with McVay and that crew?
Yeah, he loves it. Him and McVay have a great relationship. Yeah, he does a lot with the blitzes and picking up pass protection stuff. And then Ryan Wendell, who worked with me last year, got the job out there, and he's a wonderful person. So Ryan's the offensive line coach, and Zach's the assistant O-line coach. So that combination to me is just an ideal situation because I know what kind of person Ryan is and what kind of coach, and I know Zach. And so the combination is just fantastic. So Zach loves his life right now. Just being a part of those guys.
Yeah, and he's out in LA. I'm sure as a young dude, he enjoys being out in the sunshine and all that. I got a question. You mentioned that you and Dawn met in high school. I didn't realize that. Did she follow you down to Miami, Ohio?
She ended up staying closer to home, and but she went to Miami on the weekends.
Gotcha.
Everyone thought she went to Miami, but she went to community school close, community college close. But they all thought she was at Miami because she was there every weekend.
So she came down.
We always credit her with keeping us out of trouble.
Yeah, a good woman will, and I can give Leslie some credit for keeping me out of trouble towards the tail end of college for sure. Except for that, Leslie, we started dating my junior year of college, and just like she is now, she likes to go to bed early and not go out, but it's fine with me, doing my thing as well. And we have a great yin and yang about it, except for I say she didn't keep me out of trouble. It turned into my senior year during the season. I had a 7 a.m. curfew was when I needed to be back in my bed at our college house. And the reason for that was similar to when I was in the NFL, I couldn't go to sleep without watching the game film. Well, we didn't have iPads, so I would literally record the game on TV, and then I would sit there and watch the recorded version of it in our living room. And she's like, just make sure you're in bed by 7. Because I'd go out with my buddies, and then we'd come back from the bar, and I would literally sit there and watch the game film like a psychopath in our living room. And then when I was in the NFL, we'd be sitting at dinner with people we have in town, and I'm like, there's 3 plays that I have to get to tonight. I don't know why I made this call, or I don't know why I stepped with this foot and got beat on this play. Like there had to have been a reason, prior to the play. Did the safety move? Was it alignment? Was there a wheel lined up on the outside of the line where I thought the nose was going to cross my face? Like what was the reason? So I'd be sitting there in the living room watching my iPad in the league, and Leslie would be like, just come to bed. And I'm like, well, I'm not gonna be able to sleep till I watch it anyway. So, and people don't get, like, when you're the center and you're making the calls, especially as much responsibility as I had towards the end of my career, it's like, I can't walk in the next day and say, I don't know why I did that. That's not an acceptable answer. Like, even if I screwed something up, as long as I got a good explanation, then
sure.
I'm not going to get reamed the next day. But if I go in and say, yeah, we let a free runner go, and I don't know why I pushed the call that way. So so
that's what made you great. That's what made you great, because you cared that much and you wanted to be right.
Yeah, I did care. I cared a little too much earlier in my career. Not that I didn't care as much later in my career, but I didn't let it. I enjoyed the experience of it all a lot more towards the end. More towards even like when you came in, I got my second contract. I quit getting hurt so much where I could enjoy playing ball and not be worried constantly. We had a little better teams then too, which helps. But
sure,
yeah, sometimes caring a little too much. All right, so Zach and Wendell, they both coached under you. I'm sure they consider you mentors. My understanding was it Callahan and Mudd that they were your big mentors along the way?
Yeah, Bill Callahan was the line coach for John Gruden at the Raiders, and they hired me as I don't know, whatever my position was. I was helping, drawing the runs and doing the things you do. So they taught me the West Coast offense and how they coached and those kind of things. And that was my start. And then from there, I went on, and as I moved on and I was moving on in my career, I met Howard Mudd, and I really appreciated the way that his Indianapolis Colts line played, even though they really only had a couple good players. I mean, all-star players, and the rest were guys that, were limited contracts and not much experience. And I really appreciated the things that how he taught and how he did it. So when he retired, I grabbed him and asked him to be a mentor of mine, and he came to the Saints in the training camps and watched the tape and really helped me move along as a coach. And I think, the best thing coaches can do is learn from people. And I learned a lot from you as a player. I learned from players all along. And the combination of having that good mentorship early and then continuing to learn how players think, what they see, how they move, and how everyone's different. And they're going to move a little bit different, and things are still going to work out. And you got to, and working with guys to do it their way within the system, from talking with players. So I think I just learned a lot over the years in that combination, and it's been a blessing for me.
Yeah, and I only got to play under one organization, so I was exposed to, 7 head coaches in 9 years, but 2 were interims. But you've been around some of the best of the best, and when you look at the Grudens, McVay, Sean Payton, now Sean McDermott, and many other great coaches as well, is there like a specific attribute that all of them have, or a commonality that makes all of them successful coaches?
Yeah, one, they're all themselves. And when they can when a guy becomes a head coach or become a position coach or becomes the center of the football team, if they can continue to be themselves with us, but be themselves and be the true person that they are and always try to get better, they can be good. Those guys were all good as assistant coaches. They're all good as coordinators. And that's what makes them good as head coaches as they continue to grow. But they're not trying to be anyone else. They're more addicted than anybody to the game. They never get a break. Like I talked about, I just had time off. Well, that doesn't happen for the head coach because he's going to hire new assistant coaches that, each year he's got to get his staff around. And then as soon as that's done, then the draft starts, so they get even less of a break than the rest of us, so my hat's off to the work they do. But I really think that the best ones are guys that just continue to be themselves and try to grow and get better every day.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I talk about Sean McDermott. I'm like, he's not afraid to have that uncomfortable conversation, but he's always himself. I'll never forget when he came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to start Nate Peterman this week, and I need you to have my back." And I said, I got you. I said, and it ended up being a bad decision. I mean, looking back and the way it worked out, but Sean's himself, and Sean is always looking for that edge. He's always looking to find something to fine tune, but that's who he is. He's sitting there in the workout room every morning, listening to a podcast or an audiobook. And then you're going to hear that message in the team meeting, but it's that constant striving to get better. That makes a ton of sense. Let's talk about your current group that you got now. Year 2 under Kromer. It doesn't surprise me that these guys took the next step, and not that they didn't play at a high level back in 2022, because they did. I thought the offensive line played well that year with some injuries and moving parts that season. But this year, I mean, you have the fewest sacks per attempt or sacks per game in the NFL. James Cook's got one of the highest yards per contact in the NFL. We don't get a whole lot of stats. So when you look at those two, it's like, okay, statistically, this group had a good year, and then you can watch the film, and they did as well. So I just want to ask you about a few of those guys. So Spencer Brown takes the next step this year, and you could always see that he had the tangible gifts, but this year he played incredible. I mean, I was talking to Brandon Bean about it on the podcast, and he was talking about, I mean, look, Spencer Brown played this year like a guy that in a couple of years we won't even be able to afford. He played so good. So how did he make that jump?
we talk about exactly what you just said. Like, as far as like, there's a lot of goals, as a player in my mind, and I want to accept that as a coach. And I don't know, it's not a natural thing, but it's like, hey, listen, one of my goals is to hope that we can't afford you.
Right.
That you're going to make so much money that no budget can handle it but one team, and you make all the money you ever thought you could. And that's one of my goals. The other one, just with him specifically, he's gotten healthy. He's worked his way into this position. It wasn't easy. He switches line coaches. He's trying to figure it out. He never questioned it. He was always working. But this year it clicked. Like, you can see a 6'9" player playing low with his base underneath him. He's the fastest man from here to here that I've ever seen in pass protection. When he was hurt 2 seasons ago, and someone else would come in to play his position, it was noticeably different. How just in practice, you're like, oh my God, when Spencer would come back, he would pass that so quickly. I said, you realize what a freak you are? I said, you have to understand that most human beings can't move like you. And you're 6'9", 320. I said, go, just building his confidence and allowing him to know that he can do it was half the battle. But he really worked his butt off, and he had a phenomenal year.
How good can Osiris Torrance be?
Oh, my God. You talk about unflappable. This guy went in his first – so I got to tell you a quick story first. Yeah. So we sit down after the season. He just played every single snap that we played on offense and every field goal and extra point. All right, so he played more snaps than anybody on offense. So we sit down after the season, and I was like, Osiris, we call him, he goes by Cybo because that's what his mother used to call him. And so I'm like, Cybo, you realize that, the kind of year you had and what you've done? And he's like, yeah, I thought maybe I'd come in, do a little scout team, see if I can help the team in any way. And I said, I didn't think that at all. I said, I put you in with the ones early on in training camp. And I said, I was just waiting for you to mess up. And you didn't. So I kept you in there. He goes, that's what happened? I go, what do you think happened? I said, you just kept blocking the guy over you. How was I going to take you out? But that kid just went into the game, into practice, into the games with the same attitude every week. I mean, he went against some of the best defensive tackles in the NFL week in and week out and never flinched. And he gave up a sack in a game, and he come to the sideline like it was the end of the world. I said, Sipes, you're going to play 15 years. You're going to give up more than that one sack. Relax, pal. He got your hands. You posted. He got your hand. Just spread your feet. You'll be fine. Flip your hands. You'll be fine. He's like, oh. So after the game, he says, that really calmed me down. I'm like, it's not any different. It's not any harder than that. You're not always going to win. Just figure out what happened and go on to the next play.
Yeah,
but he is really he is a special guy, and he's a special player. We did a lot of things offensively because of the talent that he had, with all the tackle pulling schemes and stuff, and him blocking some of their best players one-on-one constantly throughout a game. He does a phenomenal job of finishing blocks. Most guys can block when they stay on one angle, and then when the defender goes in a different angle, they lose him. He's phenomenal at changing his hip, flipping his hips and changing his hat and moving the guy out of the hole. Like, I haven't seen it in a long time.
That's awesome. You calmed him down like that. That was Jeff Hangartner for me early in my career. I don't know which game it was early in the season, my rookie year, and I came to the sideline and just shattered my helmet. The pads are all out of it on the sideline. I was so mad. And Jeff said something very similar, saying, hey, you're going to play a long time. You're going to give up a lot of sacks. So don't even worry about one. Like, yes, worry about it, but just worry about not giving up another one and how you can get better, and don't get beat by that same move, because he's coming back to that. And he said, you do realize those guys get paid too, and you're a rookie. So those guys probably are making a lot more money than you. Like, those guys are expected to win sometimes, but when you come from college, which Cybo just did, it's sometimes hard to realize, you're going to get beat at times in this level. There's no Louisiana Lafayette's on the schedule. I'm trying to think of, I think he played there.
He actually played there.
That's what I was hoping that was the right one, because
Yeah.
To say something that wouldn't truly offend a bunch of listeners out there, since he did play there. But anyways, last guy I want to talk to you about on the offensive line is a guy that came in as a rookie, my final year in the league, didn't know how to handle his personality at first, and now we're lifelong friends. How quickly did you realize that despite some of Deion's quirkiness and whatnot, and, you know, active on social media, and he's got the hair and everything else, that he's a freaking beast?
I appreciate all the things he does on Instagram, and all the things that he does, and his individuality, because that gives him energy.
Yep.
That's him. And we want him to be him. I want him to be him. The fans love him. He gets energy from the fans. His day-to-day is so enjoyable now because he does all those things. When he's in the football meetings, he's thinking football. When he's at practice, no one works harder than this guy. I mean, he works hard, and he is a talented individual. But all the other things that he does really motivates him in football. I think he's a guy that if he just had football would be bored.
Right.
He needs to help people and he needs to help people, and he needs to be out there with the fans for him to enjoy his experience. And I think that makes him a better player for him individually, because he does all those things. So I love the guy. And if you ever see bigger calves on a human being, take a picture and send them, because this man has bigger calves than any human being on earth.
He does. He truly does. Yeah, he came in, and he comes in, and Cordy Glenn was kind of in and out with injury, and it was like an eye thing and an ankle thing. And finally, Richie was like, hey, put Deion at left tackle. I like the way he's playing during training camp. He's just tough. He's finishing guys to the ground. He's scrapping with the defense. Richie's like, put him next to me, and let's just see what happens. And Deion goes on and starts a majority of the season. And our 6'3" guy that we drafted that could maybe play guard, you know, we'll see where he kind of fits in. Now he's our starting left tackle, and he develops into what likely should have been an All-Pro this year, but a multiple Pro Bowl winner, a Walter Payton Man of the Year. He's an awesome person. He's a great designated driver because he doesn't drink, but he's got the most personality of anybody. So he'll hang out all night with you, but he'll drive around the offensive line. I got to tell you this quick story. I think we've told it on the podcast before, but Deion, his rookie year, we're heading in the bye week. All of our families are already home because we came back from an away game, but it was a 1:00 away game somewhere east. So we go to the casino that night, and it's like 3 a.m. We're driving home, and I said, Deion, just go, man. Quit stopping at these red lights. There's no one on the roads. It's downtown Buffalo on a Sunday night. So he's really reluctant, but he goes, and then he gets pulled over, and he's so worried. I said, just roll down all your windows. You're going to be fine. The cop comes up, and he's like, hey, you guys can take off. You're fine. Good game. Good win earlier. We pull away, and Deion's like, if you guys weren't in the car, that would not have happened like that. I'm just telling you, black people do not run red lights like that. This is the dumbest thing I've ever been a part of. I cannot believe you guys talked me into that. So I haven't talked him into running any more red lights since, but gosh, me and Deion still get a good laugh about that. But so mid-year, Joe Brady takes over as offensive coordinator. You're going to be running a lot of Dorsey's plays and stuff that was installed in training camp. It's impossible to install a whole new offense. I could tell there was some game plan specific stuff week in and week out, which is going to happen no matter who's the offensive coordinator, but especially when you change. How much different do you feel like the offense will look to, you know, to the maybe me in the broadcast booth? So maybe not just the casual fan, but someone that's not in the building. How much different will it look next year, you think?
I thought we had a lot of success in the last half of the season offensively. And I just think that we're looking to add to that level of football. I think the thing that you noticed is the running game, you know, was more established. You know, Joe and I collaborating together on the plays that we're going to actually call in games, you know. And so we try to take a little bit off of Josh, although he always puts a lot on himself, and try to incorporate the running game a little more often and a little more play action pass. And I think you saw that. I think that'll just continue to increase. as next year goes. But obviously the offensive system is in. It's just how you run the system and how you use the system. Maybe a different mentality that way. Sean does a great job of setting the tempo for the offense, even though he's a defensive coach, of setting the tempo as a team. Like, hey, listen, I want to establish a line of scrimmage. Well, that means you better run it. You better be physical. You better keep the ball away from the opposing team, which I think we did in the second half of the season, and allowing our defense to grow as they had a lot of injuries. And I think, as they continue to get healthier and we put that kind of offense together, and Brandon Beane continues to bring in football intelligence, meaning guys that are smart about football and tough guys. He's all about the character, and Terry's the same way. Terry sits in all these draft meetings for hours and hours. He owns the teams and all the different things he owns, and he sits in our draft room for hours before the draft, making sure that we bring in guys of character. And so when you put all that together, and then you get this attitude that we have offensively that we've established the second half of the season with Cook running. We were number one in efficient runs in the NFL. I mean, there's two things you want to be as an offensive line, and that's be efficient in the running game, and we were number one in the NFL, and sacks given up, and we were number one in the NFL. And so I think we can carry that forward now that we'll have an off season to even improve more play action protections, more play action plays, and get good at an overall scheme. Although the offense technically will stay the same, it'll be how you utilize it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. How much fun was that Dallas game when you just simply run the ball down their throat the entire game? And Joe Brady, I know as an offensive coordinator, you have all these pass plays that you have installed for the week and you want to get to them and you probably feel like you got some shots, but he just stuck with it and you guys just simply ran the ball down their throat the whole game.
I think anytime you can have that kind of success running, you take it until it dries up, and that's where Joe Brady, came from that same mold that I came from with Sean Payton and the Saints. And, we always, like, if you get that running game going, it's hard to cover a pass.
Right.
And when we got in that game, and when you're making 8 yards, 10 yards a carry, it's like a pass. Right. And with little risk. And with the way that thing was going, and we really had picked it up, and what James Cook has done for us, it allowed us, and we finally figured out how to utilize him in the running game as far as like what plays he was good at, what schemes, what style, how he cut, how he thought, and how it fit with our offense. And that really started to click as it went. So, it's an exciting time in Buffalo, I think, because of the things that we're seeing coming about on offense.
Yeah, and Josh Allen. And so when you got
Josh, I got to tell you a story. Josh is so crazy, and I'm sure you've said this before in your podcast, but I've never seen a quarterback. I was with Drew Brees, and Rich Gannon got MVP when I was at the Raiders, and like all these guys that you get around, and then you get around Josh, and he tells you, hey, listen, make sure there's a quarterback run early in the game because I want to set my pads. I'm like, you're the quarterback. You're not the fullback. What are you talking about? He's like, oh, yeah, I love those. I love those early runs. Jeez. But the way he helps us in the red zone, just running the ball in, because, the red zone gets tight. It's hard to complete a pass in the red zone. And he's done a good job of like, hey, we continue to put in plays where he's running. And obviously he had so many touchdowns this year rushing the ball. Or maybe someday he'll have more rushing than he will passing, but I doubt it because he can sling it too well.
Have you been around a guy with more arm talent than Josh Allen?
No, he's just an overall talent. Just his ability to run. When they clock him at 21 miles an hour in practice, when he's chasing down a guy that just got an interception, 21 miles an hour is your quarterback.
Right.
I mean, I remember we used to celebrate at the Rams when Gurley would run that. He's a star running back, and our quarterback can run that fast, and he's huge. So it's fun to be around him, and he's It's a huge piece of and he loves the line. The linemen love him. When you get that, you know how it is when a quarterback and the line are together. It's enjoyable to come to work.
And Josh is fun. I mean, I was watching the mic'd up segment from the Chargers game. That's right when Tiger Woods did the big dog moment with the guy that he didn't recognize. And so then Josh hit every single person throughout the game with the big dog. And the game's tight. It's on the line. The season's potentially over if you lose that game. And Josh is big dogging everyone to kind of keep him loose and probably keep himself loose too. And he's a trip. He truly is. And I mean, I'm assuming you haven't been on the golf course with him, but that dude can absolutely smoke a golf ball. Last year, Peyton Manning was in the group in front of us the day before Derby, and Josh hits a ball probably 370 on the par 5 finisher at 18 at Valhalla, and Peyton Manning turns around because he can, you can hear that ball hit the fairway a little bit, and he turns around and just assuming that it's someone's second shot and Josh is still standing on the tee. Then he leaves Derby, and we had a pretty good few days, and he flies up because he's got to make Micah's charity softball event, and they have a temporary fence like 40 yards in from the wall, and Josh is hitting the ball onto the street out of the AAA stadium. I mean, he's an absolute freak show. He truly is. All right.
Yeah.
All right. I got to know this. For those listening, there's a fine system within every offensive line. I'm assuming you guys still have the fines, and, we kind of police each other during the year. So assuming there's still fines within the O-line, Who's running? Is there still a bell like I had?
There's no bell, but we do have, I don't know where that went when I was, in between not being here, but Greg Mance actually ran that.
Nice.
He was the judge. He had a lot of personality, and the guys voted him in to run it, and he was very stringent. He was raising a lot of money.
That's good. Yeah, you should. Yeah, especially as much money as some of those guys are making in there. There's plenty of money to pull from center, left guard, left tackle. You can really get those guys and really jack up that pot. Who's the offensive lineman during training camp of your group currently that no one on the defense wants to fight?
Oh, Dion. Yeah, you'd have to be out of your mind to fight Dion. He was an absolute beast.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, and the other guys are tough now. We got a lot of tough guys, but you'd be you should just check yourself into a mental institute if you try to get in a fight with Dion.
Yeah, he's tough. He put up some pretty nice highlight reels. I was talking to him earlier. I was talking to him about a month ago. Actually, it was before this, probably 4 or 5 weeks ago, asking him how much he likes pulling, because sometimes guys don't like to pull, especially across the formation, because you're going to get smacked a good amount of times. You're not pulling out on the perimeter where you're going out for the corner on a toss crack. You're trapping defensive ends. You're leaning up on linebackers. He's like, bro, I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm like, dude, you're an animal on those. I've never seen a tackle pull across the formation. Now, Spencer's just as athletic, but Dion is a battering ram. He's got 6 inches less. He's 6 inches lower naturally than Spencer.
Yeah.
But, I mean, well, let me ask this. Did you guys see that tackle trap play on film ever, or did you guys just put it in and say, man, this can work timing-wise?
So here's what happened. So, you know me. I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna try to figure out what plays fit our team. And we ran at the Rams, we ran a tackle trap and actually handed it to the wide receiver and faked the halfback the other way with Whitworth 4 times a year. And so I was adept to the type of things that you need to do to coach the play. But you look at both tackles can run like crazy, and both guards are 335, 340-pound monsters. So we said, why are we pulling the guards when we could pull the tackles? So I just said, let's get a couple. Well, then it was going to be Monday Night Football. And I'm like, there's nothing better than Deion Dawkins pulling on Monday Night Football. So we pulled 13 times in the Monday night game. And my phone was off the hook after the game. Like, how many times are you going to pull Deion Dawkins? But it really, it just fits who we are. And it fits our gun run team. And both our tackles can run like they're freak shows. And both our guards are manimals. you know, so they can both, the guards can both shut down these guys over them. The tackles can both pull. And it just fit who we were. And we just kept we just changed the variations that we had. We just kept doing it and doing it. That was our number one play, you know, our zone play, our mid zone play. And that play was our number one play because we were good at it. And, you know, I always promise the guys, like, listen, the number one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do things we're good at. And if you're not good at it, we're not doing it. Because, and so many people will try to stay with, hey, this is our system. I'm like, no, our system is what you guys are good at. And so that's where that came from. And we just kept doing it. We got better and better and changing the way we did it. And it worked out for us. And the guys were happy.
Yeah, it's fun to watch. It truly is. And then, you know, that tackle's even getting more momentum as he goes across the formation. And generally, I mean, those guys aren't necessarily heavier than your guards now, but generally the tackles are so big on the edge. It's fun to watch those guys pull around. All right, last one from me. What's your favorite wing spot in Buffalo?
Okay. So if I want hot wings, just straight up hot, all right, I'm a Big Tree guy.
Yep.
I'm a Big Tree guy. But if I want any flavors, I'm a Barbell. My wife loves Big Tree. All right. She loves it. And then but we also love honey. Well, Dion taught me this. He's like, listen, Kromer, because I didn't know about the flavors. And you always trust a fat guy
no doubt
when you're talking about food, right? So he looks at me. He's like, I know you don't know anything about food, Kromer. So here's what you need to do. Go to Barbell and get Cajun honey butter barbecue. And I'm telling you, every home game, we have a house full of guests, whether it's, you know, the night before the game, we got a house full of guests. We got relation, we got friends. We pack the place, and I get 120 Barbell every home game.
Wow. That's a strong order. I'm actually with you there. And I took Jason Kelsey to Big Tree before the game, and he's like, oh, I've always heard of Barbell. And I said, Barbell's great. It truly is. But you're coming to Buffalo to get Buffalo wings. Let's go to Big Tree. Plus, it's got the history, and it's right next to the stadium, and he absolutely loved it. But, yeah, Big Tree's very strong. Leslie loved Big Tree as well, and she liked their wings. But when she was pregnant, I was there after a game one night, and I was in there kind of late. And Leslie's like, hey, just bring me home some food. Stay out as late as you want. I said, well, we might not be home till at least after the Sunday night game. She said, that's fine. Wake me up. I'm just going to be hungry. You know, I'm 8 months pregnant. What was she? Yeah, 7 or 8 months pregnant with Garrett. And so I told the chefs, I was like, hey, before you guys close up, you need to make some food for my wife, and then I'll bring it home for when she's done or when this game's done. And so they made her tacos with the hot sauce, the buffalo sauce on it. And now that's like one of Leslie's favorite things ever. Like she wants to go to the Big Tree simply for these tacos, which seems funny that you'd get tacos from the Big Tree. We're both Ohio guys, and you can get blue cheese in Ohio. It's not like being down in the South, but are you full in on the blue cheese?
Listen, this blue cheese is different.
Yep.
This blue cheese, that's what everybody that comes to my house, they all say, I don't want blue cheese, get the ranch. I said, we're not getting ranch. You're trying this blue cheese. And they fall in love with the buffalo blue cheese. I'm trying to get to the recipe. No one will tell me what it is, but there's something different about this blue cheese.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Kromer, I appreciate your time, brother. I'm grateful that you made the time to come on the podcast. I know you're busy as hell. You're sitting at the office right now at 7 p.m., or we started at 7 p.m., a little bit later than that now. So I appreciate the time. Let's find some time to get together, maybe in Florida this offseason at some point.
Let's do it. Sounds good. I appreciate you, man.
Yep, my man. Appreciate you, Kromer.